For decades, China has been the world's leading producer of rare earth elements. Materials created from rare earth, which include ultra-high-strength magnets, catalysts, and phosphors, are essential for making a wide range of high-tech products, from consumer electronics like smartphones and TVs, to green technologies like electric vehicles and wind turbines. Even advanced military equipment like precision-guided missiles, smart bombs, and satellite communication systems rely on rare earth to function. Companies like Apple, Samsung, and Tesla are heavily dependent on a steady supply of these materials to be able to make smartphones and cars. As the world's most dominant producer of rare earth elements, China exports over 80% of the global rare earth supply to key partners such as the United States, Germany, France, and Japan. And at the height of its dominance in 2009, China accounted for an astonishing 95% of the world's rare earth production, despite only holding 36% of the world's reserves, as if that wasn't already large enough. So in this video, we'll explore China's strategic dominance on the rare earth market, examine the dangerous consequences of its monopoly, and discuss whether China's grip on rare earth elements may or may not end soon. Okay, so you might be wondering, what exactly are rare earth anyway? Well, rare earth elements, or REEs, are a group of 17 metallic elements that are widely used in high-tech production because of their unique magnetic and electrical properties. There are 15 REEs found in the periodic table, specifically the lanthanide series located on the bottom here, with the addition of yttrium and scandium. Now, despite its name, rare earth elements are actually not rare and can be found pretty much all over the globe. What makes them quote-unquote rare is that they're very hard to extract and purify. Mining REEs is challenging since they are widely scattered on the Earth's crust. The mining process begins by digging rock or sand from the ground, then separating the valuable ore from waste like rocks or radioactive materials. The ore then must be refined, just like any other metal. But for REEs, there's another process where the various rare earths are separated from each other. This is both difficult and expensive, as the atoms all display very similar chemical behavior because of their unique atomic structure. So while REEs are abundant, they are not easily accessible. In addition to being difficult and expensive, this process of separating REEs is extremely harmful for the environment. As part of the separation process, tons of ammonium sulfate, ammonium chloride, and other chemicals are injected into the ground, filling the land with radioactive waste and corrosive chemicals that leave mining areas like barren wastelands, unsuitable for growing food or for people to inhabit in. The first discovery of rare earth elements occurred in Sweden back in the 18th century, when large deposits were found in the town of Ytterbia, which by the way became the origin of the name yttrium and ytterbium, two of the 17 rare earth elements. In 1949, 3 men discovered an area with unusually high radioactivity southwest of Las Vegas. This place eventually became the Mountain Pass Mine of California, which held one of the largest RE deposits in the world. This mine, which is estimated to contain 18.4 million tons of RE deposits, is the only rare earth mining and processing facility in the United States. In 1952, the mine started with several small-scale production, but this expanded greatly in the 1960s. You see, in the 1960s, REEs began to be widely used for a vast range of commercial purposes, like europium used as red phosphor for color TVs. Between 1965 and 1995, the Mountain Pass Mine became the world's dominant supplier of rare earth metals, allowing the US to be fully self-sufficient. However, in the 1990s, domestic production in the US declined significantly due to environmental concerns, leading to the shutdown of the mine in 2002 after a toxic waste spill. On the other hand, while the US were ceasing production, China was ramping up its efforts, increasing production from a mere 55,000 tons in 1996 to an impressive 98,000 tons in 2004, with that figure rising as high as 168,000 tons in 2021. But how did China's REE industry become so big in the first place? Well, China has been mining for rare earth elements since the 1950s, But most of this production was small scale and oftentimes illegal. In the 1980s, things remained largely the same, but around this time, Deng Xiaoping said that the Middle East has oil, but China has rare earth elements, signifying that he wants REEs to be China's oil. However, at the time, his statement was only half true. Yes, China does have tons of rare earth reserves, but until the 1990s, it sold low-processed rare earths to the rest of the world at market price. It's far off from becoming China's oil. The 1990s then saw both the decline of the US REE industry and the rise of China's. The Chinese government began incentivizing miners with lots of benefits like export tax rebates, while also investing in refining and processing technologies, intending to making REE a strategic resource for the country. As demand for REE grew due to their use in high-tech products, China was able to fulfill all that demand and more. At its peak, China's supply of rare earths were more than double what the world needed, and prices were low because reserves were abundant and competition among Chinese miners were fierce. Thanks to this fierce competition and massive government support, other producers like the US, Japan, and France either couldn't compete or chose not to compete, essentially giving up on production, and instead relying on China's cheap supplies. This is when China's REE monopoly began. By the 2000s, China had already become the dominant player in the global REE market. Prices around the world were dropping due to the outsourcing of downstream production to China, and the Chinese government was purchasing REE mines through its state-owned companies to gain even more control over the market. By 2009, China had become the de facto global miner of REEs, controlling 97% of the world's REE trade. For some elements like dysprosium and terbium, both vital for green energy technologies and military defenses, China controlled 99% of global output. Today, China's share of REE production is around 70 to 80%, but this number would be higher if we accounted for illegal production. And unlike the US, which only has one REE mining facility, China has mines scattered all across the country, with RE deposits found in 22 provinces. However, the majority of mining and production is based in a place called Bayan Obo in Inner Mongolia. This location is home to the largest known RE deposit in the world, with 100 million tons of deposits, 5 times larger than the Mountain Pass mine in the US. This mine alone accounted for 80% of China's RE production and 45% of the world's production. Now, a dependency of such an important resource to a single country is very risky. If China should reduce its export quota or cut off export entirely, then the result for the technology sector will be disastrous. This had actually happened before, in 2010, when China had tensions with Japan due to the Senkaku Diaoyu Island dispute. China then stopped all their exports to Japan, cut its production quota by 25%, and also reduced their export quota by 37%. This was really bad for Japan and many other countries, since at the time, Japan was 100% dependent on China for its REE supply. China's export restrictions caused REE prices to skyrocket. For example, the price of neodymium oxide increased from $25 per kilogram to $340 per kilogram within a year. The same happens with other REEs like dysprosium and europium that multiplied by 10 times from September 2010 to October 2011. Suddenly, the business media was filled with stories of how if the Chinese hold back on their supply of rare earths, your iPhone won't work, your computers won't work, the whole national security system wouldn't function, and many more. Companies like Apple and Tesla would probably stop growing. It's like the world suddenly woke up to the fact that China is the sole major exporter of a very important material essential for people's daily life in addition to every country's national defenses. And thanks to this realization, nations around the world began to resist China's restriction. The US, Japan, and the EU sued China at the WTO for their export restriction, eventually winning the case in 2015. In addition, countries also began opening domestic mines or started investing on rare earth companies around the world to reduce their dependency to China. For example, the US reopened its Mountain Pass mine in 2010 after it was closed in 2002. To date, The US Department of Defense has invested $100 million to MP Materials, the company in charge of running the Mountain Pass mine, with the most recent investment of around $35 million in February 2022. In addition, the Department of Defense has also invested $120 million in building a RE separating facility in Texas. Japan, meanwhile, doesn't have much resources in the country, so it turned its attention abroad and invested heavily on RE production in other countries, most notably Australia. In 2011, Japan, through its state-owned company, provided a total of $250 million in loans and equities to Lynas, an Australian rare earth company. The partnership still stands today, as in 2019, Lynas signed a 10-year loan extension with its Japanese backers, and recently in September 2022, Japan invested another $9 million in Lynas. Now, there are several signs that China's monopoly on RE might end soon. One is the collective effort of the world to shake off its RE dependence to China and diversify its resources of RE, like what the US and Japan have done. So far, it has worked pretty well, with Japan reducing its RE imports from China from over 90% to 85% within a decade, and aiming to bring that number down to 50% by 2025. The US still lags behind with 78% share of Chinese imports in 2020, but it's still a huge improvement from almost 100% dependency in the 2000s. All of this is possible because, like I said before, rare earth isn't actually rare at all. The second reason is the severe environmental damage caused by RE extraction and separation process. Radioactive waste has decimated the mining and production areas. Poor governance and regulations have allowed it to spill into inhabited areas of the mining regions, disrupting people's daily lives. A resident in Bayan Obo says that, before the factories were built, there were just fields here as far as the eye could see. In the place of this radioactive sludge, there were watermelons, aubergines, and tomatoes. But now, plants grew badly. They would flower alright, but sometimes they produce no fruit or have a strange smell. Not to mention, the corrosive chemicals used in RE extraction can also cause serious health problems, including nervous system breakdowns, bone cancer, skin cancer, and cardiovascular and respiratory issues. The severe environmental damage caused by RE extraction and separation is expensive to clean up. For example, in the mountains of Jiangxi province, where there is a long history of RE mining, cleaning up the mess could cost at least $5 billion and take around 50 to 100 years. Ironically, because the prices of rare earths have been so low for over 2 decades by now, the profits from selling REs are nothing compared to the amount needed to repair the damage. In the 2000s, mining activity in Jiangxi province was mostly unregulated. However, in 2016, China began to tighten regulations in an effort to protect its environment. As a result, we can expect mining activity in China to slow down as the country begins to clean up the environmental damage caused by RE extraction. Now, there's also an argument to be made that even if China's share of RE production decreases over time, it will not harm China's competitive advantage in the rare earth market. Yes, countries like the US and Japan would continue to decrease their dependence on China's REs. After all, rare earth is actually not rare, and it's simply a matter of whether these countries are willing to mine their own REs or seek other suppliers instead of relying on China. But the RE industry is not just about mining and extracting rare earth elements, but also about using them to create high-strength magnets, catalysts, and phosphors that in turn can be used by companies like Apple, Samsung, Tesla, and Foxconn to create smartphones, computers, and electric vehicles. And so far, China is still miles ahead from any country in the world in terms of research and development for manufacturing high value-added materials. This is because when countries were still fully dependent on China's RE, China invested billions in research and development, and it trained or brought in thousands of engineers with degrees in material sciences, metallurgy, and chemistry, devoting themselves to finding and perfecting new methods in rare earth processing, mining, smelting and separation, refining, and production. No other country has such large-scale concentrated talent in this field. So we can say that China's RE dominance is not about its supply, although it does have a massive supply. But the real competitive advantage lies in its advanced processing technology, which is difficult for other countries to replicate. For example, even if the US is able to mine and extract REs from the Mountain Pass mine, it still needs to transport those REs to China for turning them into high value added materials like magnets and phosphors. So, I guess the world would still be dependent on China, if not for its supply of rare earth, then for its advanced processing technology that frankly allows the world to function as it is now. This is Doverhill, and see you next time.